She built the most beautiful temple in the ancient world. Then, someone spent decades chiseling her name off every stone that held it. Meet Hatshepsut. 1508 BCE, Thebes, Egypt. Pharaoh. Not queen, not regent, not temporary, pharaoh. She was born into power. Daughter of Thutmose I, one of Egypt's most celebrated warrior kings. He had daughters. He had sons by secondary wives, but Hatshepsut was the one who inherited his spine. When her father died, she did what Egyptian women of royal birth did. She married her half-brother, Thutmose II. She was 12 years old. He was the legitimate heir because he was male, despite being the son of a lesser wife. Hatshepsut was the better born of the two. None of that mattered. They had one daughter together, a girl named Neferure. Thutmose II ruled for roughly 13 years. He was not, by most accounts, a particularly impressive pharaoh. When he died around 1479 BCE, the throne passed to his infant son, Thutmose III, born of a secondary wife named Iset. An infant king needed a regent, someone to run the country while he learned how to walk. That was Hatshepsut's job. She did it. For a while, she did it correctly. She managed the kingdom. She handled diplomacy. She kept Egypt functioning. She referred to herself as Lady of the Two Lands. Understated, appropriate, predictable. And then she wasn't. Somewhere around 1473 BCE, after roughly 7 years as regent, Hatshepsut stopped waiting. She declared herself pharaoh. Not co-regent, not caretaker, pharaoh, with the full titles, the full powers, the full ceremonial weight of the position. She became the 6th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, only the 3rd woman in 3,000 years of Egyptian history to hold the role, the first to hold it with its complete authority. Thutmose III was not removed. He stayed. He technically co-ruled. Hatshepsut simply made it very clear who was running things. The legitimacy problem was obvious. Egypt did not have a framework for what she was doing. The title for the consort of a pharaoh meant wife of the king. There was no word in the Egyptian language for a woman who simply was the king. So, Hatshepsut built one. She commissioned statues showing her with a male body and the ceremonial false beard of a pharaoh. She ordered murals painted in the masculine form. She used male grammatical constructions in her official inscriptions. She was not hiding. This was propaganda, and she ran it herself. She also claimed that the god Amun was her divine father, that he had chosen her, that her ascension was not ambition, it was divine mandate. As one of her inscriptions stated, "I acted under his command. It was he who led me." Clever. Hatshepsut could not lead armies. That role was closed to her. Egyptian military command was strictly male, so she found a different kind of power, and she used it better than almost anyone before her. She built. Her chief steward was a man named Senenmut. He was not royally born. He came from a modest provincial family and rose entirely on the strength of his competence and Hatshepsut's patronage. He became overseer of all royal works. He tutored her daughter Neferure. He had his own face secretly carved into hidden corners of the temple at Deir el-Bahri, behind doors, in recesses, where only the priests would ever see it. Whether they were lovers is a question historians have argued about for decades. The graffiti left by ancient Egyptians suggests the rumor was alive in their own time. The evidence is inconclusive. What is conclusive is that Senenmut was indispensable to her, and she protected him completely. Now, the expedition to Punt. No Egyptian ship had reached the land of Punt in 500 years. Punt was located somewhere along the southern coast of the Red Sea, possibly in the region of modern Eritrea or Somalia. The Egyptians called it the Land of the Gods. It was where incense came from, gold, exotic animals, myrrh trees. Hatshepsut sent a fleet of 5 ships. They came back with gold, ivory, ebony, leopard skins, and living myrrh trees, their root balls carefully packed in baskets to be transplanted into the terraces of her temple. They came back with apes, panthers, and giraffes. She had the entire expedition depicted on the walls of Deir el-Bahri. Every ship, every cargo, every animal, carved in relief, painted in color, the record of her achievement in stone forever. Or so she thought. This is where the temple itself comes in. Djeser-Djeseru. It means Holy of Holies. It was built into the limestone cliffs of Deir el-Bahri in western Thebes, and it was unlike anything constructed before it. 3 colonnaded terraces rising from the valley floor into the cliff face, connected by ramps, framed by trees. Osiris statues carved into the portico pillars, painted murals covering every surface. It was considered one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. Senenmut designed it, Hatshepsut built it, and for a few decades, it stood as one of the most magnificent structures in Egypt. At Karnak, she raised 2 pairs of obelisks. The ones that still stand are among the tallest ancient obelisks ever erected. She had them sheathed in electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, so they caught the sun at dawn and blazed across the Nile. She ruled for 21 years. Egypt was peaceful and prosperous under her reign. No major military losses, significant architectural legacy, expanded trade routes, a kingdom in working order. And then she died. Around 1458 BCE, probably in her mid-40s. Here is where it gets wild. Sometime in the decades after her death, Thutmose III, now ruling alone, began to erase her. Not immediately, not in a fit of rage right after her death. Historians now believe the erasure happened in the last decade of Thutmose III's own reign, 30 or 40 years after Hatshepsut died. It was not grief, it was not revenge, it was cold, strategic, deliberate legacy management. He had her name chiseled off her monuments, every cartouche gone, every image of her face defaced. Her statues were smashed and buried in a pit near the temple at Deir el-Bahri. Thousands of fragments. Her obelisks were not torn down. That would have been impious, but they were walled in, hidden behind new construction, so they could not be seen. He backdated his own reign to cover the years she had ruled. He inserted himself into the king lists as if the gap she occupied had always been his. Her daughter Neferure disappeared from the historical record around the same time. Nobody knows what happened to her. Hatshepsut was removed from history, not gradually, systematically. The working theory is political. Thutmose III was managing succession. He had a son and heir. If the historical record showed that a woman could simply declare herself pharaoh, that precedent was dangerous. Better to close the gap. Better to pretend the question was never asked. For 3,000 years, it worked. When European archaeologists began deciphering the hieroglyphics at Deir el-Bahri in 1822, they found the walls covered in royal imagery, but the cartouches were damaged, removed, replaced. There was someone here. They could not figure out who. In 1903, the British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered tomb KV20 in the Valley of the Kings. He found 2 sarcophagi, both empty. The larger one had been prepared for Hatshepsut. She had brought her father's sarcophagus into the same tomb so they could lie together. The tomb was there, the body was not. A second mummy had been found decades earlier in a different tomb, KV60. An unnamed woman. Overlooked, filed away. In 2007, Zahi Hawass launched a new investigation. The team found a canopic box in the Egyptian Museum, inscribed with Hatshepsut's cartouche. Inside the box was a single molar tooth. They went back to the KV60 mummy, the unnamed woman, the overlooked one. She was missing a tooth. The gap in her jaw matched the molar in the box exactly. The size, the shape, the angle. After 3,000 years, Hatshepsut had a face again. Her mummy now rests in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. A life-size statue that escaped Thutmose III's purge stands in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And in January 2025, Zahi Hawass announced the discovery of more than 1,500 decorated blocks near Deir el-Bahri, bearing her cartouche in brilliant color, buried and preserved for 35 centuries. They keep finding her, because you cannot actually erase someone who built in stone. Thutmose III spent years and resources and manpower trying to delete a woman from the record of human civilization. He had her name removed from lists. He had her face removed from walls. He built walls in front of her obelisks so the light would not catch the gold. Her obelisks are still there. They still catch the light. His walls are rubble. Her reward for ruling the richest empire on earth for 21 years, rebuilding trade routes dormant for 5 centuries, and constructing one of the most breathtaking architectural achievements in the ancient world? 3,000 years of nobody knowing her name. Not anymore. Follow for a new forgotten woman every single day.